The photo you are seeing on screen right now is of 6-year-old Madison Jamison and is the final photo ever taken of her before she went missing along with her mother Sherilyn and father Bobby. The family disappeared after scheduling what seemed to be an appointment to view a large 40-acre property located near Red Oak, Oklahoma. At some point during this trip, the entire family just vanished, and it wasn't until about a week afterward when they were finally reported missing. According to friends and family, Bobby and Sherilyn seemed to be living above their means. The couple was also extremely religious, even going as far as to say that they feared their home was going to be raided by evil spirits in the future. Both Sherilyn and Bobby also had health issues. Bobby was in a car accident in 2003 which resulted in chronic back pain. Sherilyn had frequent bouts of depression ever since her sister's death. She was later diagnosed with bipolar disorder and was known to avoid her medication at times. Then in October of 2009 is when the family entertained the idea of moving to a different location that was more rural. They eventually set their sights on that plot of land I mentioned earlier, which was located in the San Boa Mountains. Bobby proposed the idea that they could live out there in metal shipping containers. So they set up the appointment to take a closer look at the area, but they had one strange request for the real estate agent. Both Bobby and Sherilyn stated that they wanted to go alone and didn't want the agent to attend. The reason why was never found out. The family was last seen on October 9th, 2009, and again, it took a little while before anyone noticed that the family was actually missing. It wasn't until about a week later, October 17th, when the family's truck was found by some hunters. The hunters then contacted authorities about this abandoned vehicle. Inside was the family's dog, Maisie, severely starved and dehydrated. There was also Bobby and Sherilyn's cell phones, maps, a GPS, and $32,000 in cash. Police suspected that the family had simply gotten lost in the nearby woods. Eventually, they were able to find tiny footprints which were believed to have belonged to Madison. Following it led to a hilltop which is believed to be the exact location where this photo of Madison was taken, which was in one of the cell phones. There is a lot of debate as to what is happening in the photo. Some say that the child is in distress and about to cry, while others say that the emotions displayed here are neutral. It's also often mentioned that the person taking the photo might not even be Madison's parents. However, there is some disagreement with this suggestion, as many say that if this was indeed a malicious stranger, potentially even a killer, then it would be much more obvious that Madison was scared. Authorities later stated that they believed that the trio of Bobby, Sherilyn, and Madison spent no more than 15 minutes in the woods before returning to the truck. But what happened after they got to their vehicle is a toss-up. Over 100 authorities and volunteers, as well as search dogs, were utilized to search the area, but no trace of the family was ever found. There was, however, an 11-page letter written by Sherilyn tucked away in the truck. In it, Sherilyn detailed her distaste towards her husband since she felt that he didn't do enough for his family. She described him as being a hermit and voiced her desire to file for divorce. Then on November 6, 2013, the remains of Bobby, Sherilyn, and Madison were finally discovered. They were located about 3 miles away from the location of the truck. Now, the bodies weren't confirmed to belong to the Jamisons until a year after their discovery, but the public and investigators were more or less certain that they were a match long before that. Due to the severe decomposition, medical officials had a tough time determining a cause of death. But on the back of Bobby's skull was this tiny hole, which some believe may have been caused by a bullet. Theories immediately started spreading once more, one of which suggested that the entire incident was a murder-suicide. Factoring in Sherilyn's inconsistent mental health, the letter in the truck, and the pistol that she was known to carry around, this may have been possible. But this pistol was never found. Plus, families and friends of Sherilyn did state that while she may have had some disagreements with her husband, she still deeply loved her family. Instead, they proposed the idea that the family was kidnapped, which was also a popular theory. Since there were no signs of a struggle within the truck, it may have been possible that the family was led to the forest while being held by a gun. This idea could be supported by the fact that many personal items were left behind, including the family's dog. This theory goes a bit deeper, and some believe that the family was murdered in an event that was related to illegal substances. The fact that the family was carrying $32,000 in cash also raises a lot of eyebrows. Bobby's own father was suspected of being responsible since Bobby had a protective order filed against him, but since he was at a nursing home during the family's disappearance, he was quickly written off as a possible suspect. Owen Hart, born on May 7, 1965 in Calgary, which is a city in Alberta, Canada, was thrust into the world of wrestling from an early age, having two older brothers who wrestled and a father who taught them. Owen's father's name was Stu. Stu was a local wrestling legend and ran a renowned wrestling school. Owen excelled at wrestling in high school, and he made his professional debut while in college and later trained with his father, joining Stu's Stampede Wrestling in the 1980s. Owen's talent took him to Japan in 1987, where he competed in New Japan Pro Wrestling. His hard work paid off when he became the first non-Japanese wrestler to capture the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship in 1988. After finding success in Stampede Wrestling and Japan, Owen signed with the WWF. Here, Owen adopted a superhero persona, debuting as the masked Blue Blazer. Despite his potential, Owen often found himself in mid-card matches, serving as enhancement talent. Owen would later leave the WWF after losing at WrestleMania 5. After his time on WrestleMania, Owen jumped around various cities and countries under the Blue Blazer character until 1991, and later found himself back with the WWF. Now, the focus of this particular entry does not occur until May of 1999. A pay-per-view event was being held on May 23, 1999 in Kansas City, Missouri called Over the Edge. At the time, Owen had moved away from the Blue Blazer character within the WWF, but for this event, the WWF decided to bring back the Blue Blazer and have Owen perform a stunt where he would come flying in from the rafters of the arena. So, come time for Owen to make his grand entrance, he was all set up in the rafter of the Kemper Arena, simply waiting for his signal to fly in. Owen's harness was equipped with a quick-release mechanism. The act was originally planned to have Owen come short of reaching the ring for comedic effect. This would lead to Owen having to manually free himself and make the rest of the way on foot. So the cue finally came and Owen flew in towards the arena. Or at least that's what was expected. Instead, what happened was Owen fell 70 feet before hitting the top rope and landing in the ring. Obviously, the audience had no idea if this was somehow part of the act or if they had just witnessed a terrible accident. Unfortunately, it was the latter. Commentators Jerry Lawler and Jim Ross were equally as confused and attempted to inform the audience as to what they had just seen. Medical officials were rushed to the ring and transported Owen out of the building and to a hospital. But the fall was too much and Owen was pronounced dead as a result of internal bleeding and blunt force trauma. Apparently, Owen's final words before meeting his end were "look out." The event itself did continue, which led to heavy criticism from fans later on. Owen's now widow, Martha Hart, eventually stated that she forgave the WWF for what happened, but she wanted concrete answers as to what went wrong. So after months of investigation, it was stated that the harness and release mechanisms were not properly secured. They were also said to be defective, so even if they were secured properly, there was still risk of an accident. In November of 2000, the Hart family and the WWF settled a lawsuit where the Harts would receive $18 million. Most of said money went on to establish the Owen Hart Foundation. A former Egyptian model named Omaima Nelson is infamously known for taking the life of her husband, William Nelson. This act of violence placed Omaima in the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla, California. This case in particular sticks out for many due to the graphic details that come along with it. Omaima grew up in Egypt before moving to the US in 1986. According to reports, Omaima met William Nelson in 1991 while playing pool in a bar. William, a former pilot, had previously been convicted of smuggling illegal substances in 1984. After serving a 4-year sentence in federal prison, William was released on parole and started a new career path. When the two met, Omaima was about half of William's age, William being 56 years old. After just a few days of talking, the two actually got engaged and were married to each other. Of course, you are not going to learn very much about someone in the matter of a few days. Sometime after getting married to William, Omaima noticed that he was a rather violent man. Small disagreements turned into heated arguments, which then quickly devolved into instances of physical and violence, at least according to Omaima. For example, one time when William asked Omaima for sex but was denied, he ended up tossing her kitten out of the car window, then yelling, "I paid for you. I'm getting what I paid for." Fast forward to Thanksgiving of 1991, Omaima was fed up with her situation and decided that more drastic measures were necessary. According to Omaima, that day, William tried to her, but in an act of defense, she grabbed a lamp and smashed it over William's head. This was followed with Omaima reaching for a pair of scissors and taking William's life. Now, for most cases, things would likely end here, but this time around, it gets much more disturbing. After William died, Omaima did a number of things with the body, including mixing some of the remains with Thanksgiving leftovers and boiling his fingerprints off his hands. Afterwards, Omaima called 2 of her ex-boyfriends to help dispose of what else was left. She even asked one of them to help remove his teeth. Sometime later, authorities pulled over Omaima when she was spotted driving William's red Corvette through Costa Mesa. Inside the vehicle, police found trash bags containing William's remains. This led to an investigation of the couple's residence, where investigators stated that the walls and floors were stained with blood. Later interviews with neighbors revealed that there was what sounded like grinding sounds coming from William and Omaima's apartment. This sound went on continuously for at least 48 hours. Now, unfortunately, YouTube is very nitpicky when it comes to describing actual details in gruesome cases like this, but I wanted to be clear that it's even more graphic than what I have already shared. In the end, investigators determined that about a third of William was still missing. Omaima was arrested on December 2nd, 1991 under the suspicion that she was responsible for William's death. During Omaima's trial, she and her attorney argued that William's death was simply a result of self-defense. Omaima was also formally diagnosed with PTSD. Ultimately, she was found guilty of second-degree murder and received a sentence of 25 to life in jail. Over a decade later, in 2006, during her first parole hearing, Omaima stated that she had deep regret for her actions in 1991 and was now a quote-unquote born-again Christian. But after further evaluation, Omaima was denied parole as officials believed that she was mentally ill and volatile. Omaima actually remarried while in jail to a man in his early to mid-70s, right around when she was eligible for parole again. But yet again, she was denied. This time around, Omaima's attorney shared some new details. Apparently, Omaima disposed of William in the way she did because she feared that he would punish her in the afterlife. Additionally, the psychiatrist who diagnosed Omaima as insane stated that Omaima revealed she wore a red hat, red high heels, and red lipstick in what she called a ritual on the night of William's death. This final case is really just a sad event, and it's crazy to think that a child is capable of this. It takes us back to September 18th, 2022. 12-year-old Emma Brown was with her father, Daniel, who was 38 at the time, at home in Poolville, Texas. It was here where Emma shot her dad, believing he had died. Afterwards, Emma ran out of the house onto the driveway, where she then turned the weapon towards herself. Medical officials were contacted, and both Emma and Daniel were transported to the hospital where Daniel would survive. But 2 days after the incident, Emma passed away from her injuries. So just what in the world would cause a 12-year-old to do something so insane? Well, after investigation by authorities, it was determined that Emma had actually formed a murder pact with another 12-year-old girl. At first, it was believed that this other kid was from her school, but this was later said to be false. Apparently, this pact entailed that Emma and the other child would both kill their families before running away together. It seems that at some point after hurting her father, Emma may have had second thoughts and realized how grave of a mistake she had just made. There really is very little information that is public on this case, but I was trying to find out more details about this other kid who Emma made a pact with. There wasn't much, but this was what I could find. The other girl, who remains unnamed, lived in Lufkin, Texas, which to my understanding is about 4 to 5 hours from where Emma lived. Now, it's a bit unclear who was going to do this, but at some point after killing both of their families, either this other girl or Emma was supposed to drive over 200 miles to pick the other up. A lot of people suspected that Emma came across this other person online, which instantly made me think that this wasn't actually a 12-year-old girl. I started thinking that this was some malicious adult trying to manipulate Emma, but it turns out that this other person really was just a kid. This unnamed girl went on to be charged with conspiracy to commit murder, but specific details were not revealed. Investigators questioned this other girl to figure out just why they even wanted to do this in the first place, but it doesn't seem that they got a straight answer. It's also entirely possible that they wanted to do it just to do it. Sometimes kids don't need a motive to act a certain way at that age. One official was quoted saying, "I will say that this case is a time to remind parents that it's very important to know who your children are friends with, whether that's in the classroom, social media apps, Snapchat, TikTok, and then also gaming platforms." Emma's family were also questioned about the other girl, but they said they had no idea who she even was.